Roll cameras. Rick, you speeding?
Yes, sir.
Steve?
Speeding.
Katrina? Speeding. John? All right. Subjects, you guys ready?
I'm ready to go. Just count us down.
All right, we are rolling. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
So if you were a young person saying, I feel called to go into ministry because I want to change culture, how would you just maybe delete the word ministry and replace it with business? It seems to me one of the obstacles we need to overcome is to prove to people that you can glorify God just as much in the marketplace as you can in the church or on the foreign mission field.
So I think that as a church, we could do a lot more in honoring in some way that kind of work. You get a lot of gold stars for certain kinds of very Christian-oriented work, and you don't get any gold stars for the others. Right. So I think that's one. But I also think just helping educate people to understand what God's purposes are. They've just been wrongly educated to a large degree. It's brokenness that has caused people to think their work out there in the world doesn't matter. We have to overcome that.
Sometimes we read the text and we forget that these great biblical figures were also vocational leaders as well. You know, again, going back to Paul being a tent maker, looking at Peter and James and their fishermen's work, looking at Moses as a shepherd and the agricultural work that he did. You know, all of Jesus, even as a carpenter working with his hands. I think sometimes we look at them as their ministry in public worship as being their primary occupation, but they did day jobs. So for me, I think we have some real rich history, both in scripture and church history for this.
I think at the end of the day, God puts things on our hearts. He puts people in front of us, and he asks us to pursue those things. And I think sometimes we get that mixed up in, well, what bucket do I sit in? Am I a business person or am I a ministry person? Or do I do this nonprofit thing? And so I think if we can throw those things out and say there's causes that we care about, there's people in front of us, let me go after those things and I'll assemble the pieces around what God's put in front of me. I think that's a better vocational path.
I think that we so oftentimes find ourselves in routines, and that allows comfort to set in. And comfort, I think, is rarely a place where we find personal growth and development. So I think adventure is a catalyst to shake things up. It's in some ways the antithesis of comfort. In the end, it proves to be the most worthwhile experience. And when you're sitting around telling great stories, so many of those tend to happen outside. I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always had this love for business and what business could be, and also love for the Lord and for ministry. And growing up, I saw those as two diverging paths. I really kind of bought into this idea that there's this sacred versus secular path. And if I really want to pursue my faith and love Jesus, then I needed to sell everything and be full-time in ministry. And so we decided to sell everything, go to seminary, and I'm not even going to look back at the secular path.
Some people like to think of career as a very linear path. I think oftentimes when we look back, we see that our paths are speckled with different experiences that we would have never anticipated to bring us to where we are today. So I've had quite a varied past decade of career experiences that I would categorize as business, design, and education. Ended up meeting an investor that after talking to him for 2 hours over coffee, asked if I knew anyone that wanted to help run an outdoor gear company. After thought and prayer, I was like, let's do this. So drove out to Austin, got here on a Tuesday, started at Kamek on a Wednesday, and that was a little over 18 months ago.
Seminary was an incredibly formative experience. It reshaped my theology. God really started rekindling a passion for entrepreneurship and business, and then giving me broader vision for how might business be a way to live out my faith in a really incredible way, and then have transformative impact on a broader scale. And so it was just this merging of my passion for business, social entrepreneurship, and then the outdoors, all in that summer that Kamek came to be.
I wouldn't have used those words necessarily, but life-changing adventure through outdoor experiences is something that really resonated with me from my background in education. And meeting Greg and seeing the opportunity to come pursue that mission through business and bring to bear my experience in business and education was really compelling to me and excited me.
I do believe that God calls us to stuff that we wouldn't choose. And so it is a myth to say, to really be a good Christian is to get it all in that perfect little thing. Yeah. And there are many things I know God called me to that were miserable. Mm-hmm. They were so hard. They were so out of my sweet spot. And only in retrospect can I see how he's used it. Yeah. So I think it's not an easy answer.
Yeah, and if I could just build on that, I think the idea that we could plan our steps to the thing that is right is also a myth. Right. I would have never put myself in the seat that I'm in 10 years ago, but I'm very grateful for it now, and I feel like it's a joy to do it. But there was no, calculus of, well, am I going to do this, and how will this happen, and will that go?
10-year plan.
Yeah. So I think having an openness too to the doors that God does open, regardless of the structure that looks like. We go through different seasons of life with different vocations. It's not a crazy idea to think that you could be in ministry pastorally and then in ministry in the marketplace at different times in your life. Sure. And so I think we should embrace those things, but to your point, have a very even and open hand to them.
Engineering is something that I found out existed at a fairly early age, and I thought that's what I'm going to do. Somewhere in my teens, I found out about this place called MIT, and it was really hard to get into, and it just seemed like nerd nirvana, and I thought that is where I absolutely had to find myself. I had the opportunity to study in Paris, and that exposed me to French pastry, and it's there that I really became enamored by the beauty and the craft of French patisserie. As a scientist, I'm used to trial and error. I'm used to, taking an experiment and doing it 50 times to make it right. So this idea of doing something and failing at it and doing it over and over and over again and very rigorously perfecting it is like innate to me. Now, throughout my time in California and at Hopkins is when my husband and I started doing a lot of entertaining. We sort of found that we really loved it. We would do a lot of large parties. He would do, the meats. I would do sides, desserts, appetizers. That's where I taught myself how to make macaron. I taught myself various French techniques. And it was during my postdoc at the NIH that I had the bright idea, I can do 2 careers. Why don't I open a shop while doing my postdoc? I live here on the hill, on Capitol Hill in DC. A spot opened up just a few blocks, and everything seemed to gel, and that was kind of the what led to the opening of the Sweet Lobby about 5.5 years ago.
Shortly after we won Cupcake Wars, we found ourselves really growing in popularity, not only on the retail side, but also on the wholesale side. We found ourselves needing additional space, so therein enters Souk. And so Souk is back of house, our wholesale macaron production, as well as our cafe pastry production. And then our front of house is our globally inspired market and bakery and cafe space.
As a small business owner, I kind of had to decide where to place most of my energies. A lot of people ask me, wow, so you were in biomedical engineering, you were developing like vision, saving technology. That seems so honorable and so needed. And sort of how do you decide then to go into baking, As human beings, we're created with one main purpose, and that is to glorify God and to do that in whatever sphere we might be in. For me, I think Colossians 3:23 really came to mind, and that's, whatever you do heartily as for the Lord rather than from man, knowing that from the Lord you will receive an inheritance, for this Christ the Lord whom you serve. So this idea of whatever I was doing, that I should be doing it heartily and for the Lord.
I'm thinking of Ephesians chapter 4, in which Paul says, some are called to be pastors, some are called to be evangelists, some are called to be teachers, but their job is to build up the ministry. And it seems to me clear that what Paul is saying is that the actual ministry of the church are the laity, and they're the ones that are actually doing the work outside the doors of the church.
Yeah, well, I think it by its very nature, we are going out and creating the context that people live in. And so we are creating expressions of faith. And so each of us, wherever we go, whatever we're doing, have to ultimately say, I'm learning about this orthodoxy that I have, this doctrinal thought, and then I have to go put it into my hands, which is orthopraxy. And so I think that connection of theology to action is the expression of the laity that you're talking about. And if we divide those two things and we're just content with what's in our head, I don't actually think that's a full expression of faith. And I think the church needs to encourage people to do that application on a regular basis and encourage the exploration of what that looks like.
Many of us had worked together in different capacities, but when kind of pulled us together and talked about, hey, we're all passionate about being excellent at what we do, about process, about people, we can do this thing. And it kind of started there.
We really focused on the quality and really wanted something better for our clients. They were paying a lot of money, not getting the quality, and then we also knew the problems that the employees were having, which is the construction market can be a rough trade. We decided, hey, we can do this better. We can provide the quality, we can provide a good place for the employees to learn and develop new skills.
We work throughout Colorado and Wyoming, and we service different vertical markets, ranging from small service projects up to large construction projects. We started in a bad economy. We started with no local relationships. It was a big challenge. We had to do grassroots efforts to get our name out there and our quality and our service and who we were. And 15 years later, we've been really blessed and grateful and amazing people and amazing projects that we've worked on. For us, it's kind of evolved over time, figuring out what is our culture going to be, who are we going to be, because we really view that, we want people to do well here. We want them to retire well. We want them to feel like they're a part of something bigger. And so setting that vision and what are we doing in the next 5 years? What's our role or responsibility in the community? How are we serving? How are we giving back? How do you do something bigger than build a building?
Church is the conscience of culture. We make sure that culture understands its higher moral calling, but business is the creator of culture. They look at market conditions and they assess needs and desires and wants, and in an anticipatory way, they create products, goods, and services that actually bring to life what's in our hearts and our imaginations. And if they work together in complementary ways like that, then our societies flourish.
Even if it's one of 20 brands that someone engages with on a weekly basis, it's important for it to be a different vision. And I think there's opportunities for us to introduce brands that are very virtue-oriented to reshape people's mindsets about what their life could look like. And we encourage our entrepreneurs in this way. They're building society. They're building out the things that society says we should desire. What their identity should be, what they should desire, what the good life looks like. All of these really large philosophical questions that businesses are trying to answer on a daily basis.
Kamek's an outdoor adventure brand, purpose to equip and inspire people for the adventure of changing lives. We do that through high-quality outdoor products such as camping hammocks, sleeping bags, and new product lines to come.
Our goal is to design gear that's really simple and intuitive to use, that can be used in your backyard, even in your house, and then go with you on your most epic adventures. So gear that's simple, but also really technically innovative. We want to invite people into a fullness of life and share a story that equips and encourages people to love others well. And that has to start here. That has to start within the walls of this office.
We want to use adventure very strategically to help produce something greater in people. So we hope that adventure produces humility, curiosity, and wonder.
We're not just like an endpoint for the consumer or for the customer, but we're more of an outpost that is equipping and inspiring and then moving them on. We think that the products we're creating are catalysts for creating that experience of a fuller and deeper life.
Product is not the end for us. The product is the very beginning of the cycle that kind of pushes us all the way through being able to, tell the story to the customers, both of the retail space and our customers, and also kind of inspire them through that of what our give is and how we're giving back to give people adventure.
In the outdoor space, it's a very social space, people that are wanting to connect with a deeper meaning and purpose, and so we actually have something to share as to why we believe there is deeper meaning and purpose. And we want to move people beyond the brand and beyond the physical products and into this deeper experience of adventure, community, and love. And ultimately, my hope is that in those catalytic events, they would find the Lord.
So some of the fool's gold that we've sold to millennials is this thought that everybody's going to change the world, and that's a good concept unless it leads to us only getting excited about the big things. And I think it is important that we highlight that every day in business or in pastoral ministry is not going to be a highlight reel. It is us being faithful to the daily task of doing good work and making sure that we are mindful of the responsibilities and duties that are set before us. And as we do that, these great explosive moments come. They come as a result of us being faithful. We have a tendency to overlook the importance of dropping your kids off at school every day, or being faithful in paying your taxes, or showing up to work on time. So I think that we have to get a vision for God being glorified in the small things, which ultimately lead to big things.
So do you want to set up the experiment that we did the other day?
Yeah.
Do you remember how to do it?
This one.
Okay. What else do we need? And then they did fall down. En français? Tomber, oui.
Being a business owner, you certainly work all the time, but you do get to set your own hours somewhat. I'll have a couple hours off in the morning to take my child to school. I think that flexibility was attractive. As a believer, as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, that has to be my faith. So it kind of governs my priorities. It's tricky because it's far easier said than done, because we're so driven in this life by what is visible, what's easily around us. We seldom naturally consider what Christ would have us do. If you were to ask what sort of the main challenges of running a business, I think the first thing would just be managing staff well.
And this is really in the pursuit of perfection, right? I mean, these are they're very good. They look very nice, but I really think that we can do better.
As a Christian, there's a few considerations that you have that perhaps someone who's not a Christian would not have. I think the concept of grace, is something that as a Christian you understand. So for me, that's been a huge part of how I manage. I started to consider what a business really meant. It meant a community where you can provide employment for folks. You have the opportunity to do something else that I love, which is to mentor young people. I think when I look back at people who have been with us for, some of them, 3-4 years, it's just amazing to see that transformation through mentorship and through providing opportunities. And so I think it's important to think through bringing glory to God and how best you can do that, whether it's pursuing ministry or pursuing another career.
There is something about employment that lifts the countenance up and makes someone feel like they're fully in God's image. And that is something that a business can do. Entrepreneurs and business leaders caring enough about the Imago Dei in people to build businesses that eventually build great cities.
You know, Jesus criticizes the Pharisees in Luke chapter 11, verse 42, where he says, you know, you tithe of your mint and your cumin and your spices, but you forgot justice and the love of God. You should have done those other things, but not forgotten those virtues, the weightier things, right? And I think in business, if he was sitting around this table, he would say, you launch great businesses, you make wonderful profit, and that's all wonderful, and that's great. But don't forget justice. Don't forget to share your social capital with others and create opportunities for others who may not have the same blessing that you have.
Being in the electrical trade, you have 4 years to be in the field of on-the-job training to become a journeyman electrician. And with that, we support a 4-year apprenticeship program. We're always hiring people to come into our program, and we like to bring people in that are completely green, don't know the trade, so we can train them in our process. With that, we were starting to donate, spend time with different charities. We realized that they had some candidates that were coming out of their program looking for jobs. And so that's where we decided, let's test this out. And we started this pre-apprenticeship program.
So the guys come to us from some of the varied programs. Not only are they learning everything, they're kind of putting their lives together too. They learn their tools, they learn what it takes to go out on the job site. And then when we send them out, they're ready to go. They're ready to be a part of Wayfield.
It's really been just giving these guys just an opportunity that you care for them. And you say, guys, I got you 40 hours, I got you health insurance. And they've never had that opportunity before, so it's just rewarding.
Life has its challenges and things kind of changed, and ended up getting a felony, and it's kind of hard getting a job as a felon.
As an addict, it's hard to get back into society and reintegrate. To get with a good company, it's a tough road.
I bumped my head quite a few times, got some drug charges, some DUIs, and this last DUI I got was kind of a make it or break it for me. Honestly, I don't think that I'd be here with such a great future ahead of me without Wayfield. I just bought a house literally a month ago. Just paid off my vehicle. You know, things are looking very positive.
Just they're ready to make a change in their life. You see that switch where, hey, I've made some bad decisions in the past, but this company believes in me and they're giving me a future and they're investing in me when a lot of people wouldn't hire me before. It's kind of this, you see it click.
We've got 300 employees right now, and if you equate that out, there's 600 people that we're affecting, and we're affecting families.
I think the one word that sort of continues to resonate with me as you sort through that is the word love. Mm-hmm. If somehow our faith doesn't result in love, then we're not connecting the dots. So that love could be for the coworker, it could be for the person that's going to receive the product that we're making. Often it's very mundane. It's often unlikable people that in our business work in particular, we're still called to love. So grappling with, all right, how does my heart change? How is what I know about the truth of Christ dying on the cross and being raised again from the dead change my ability to love in the business I'm in? I think we've got to wrestle with that question.
That's good.
That's such a big point. I think most of the things we talk about in the realm of cultural change are actually not motivated out of love. They're motivated out of hostility or discomfort or wanting things to be more like we want them to be, instead of saying, we wish that this context of life was easier or better. When we talk about the entrepreneur and their role in shaping culture, and they're starting as equivalently a mustard seed with this idea that most people say won't work. It grows, it starts to shape the organizations, it starts to shape the employees, who's around them, and then as those employees go about doing their work with that organization's mission and vision, that starts to shape the stakeholders around them. It shapes the vendors that they work with, it shapes the places they buy ads, it shapes the supply chain that they work with. And then as those different things come to life through stakeholders, we think industry best practices start to change, right? People engage with companies in different ways, they have different norms, and then as those norms go, as those industries change, that's where I think the culture actually starts to take on a different form.
I love that in my work, I'm not, just in this bubble of faith of, interacting with all these other people that believe the same thing that I do or see the world the same way that I do. I think that being in the business environment just gives phenomenal opportunity to connect with a diverse group of people in ways that maybe an NGO or a faith-based organization wouldn't be able to have.
There is work to be done in all places in our culture and in society, and we can have a positive impact wherever we are. And that regardless of the work that you're in, you're always being prepared and shaped for that next season.
My perspective as a believer who is deeply passionate about ministry and thinking about how ministry is integrated into my work, I see them not as two separate things. I see them as all one. I think business today is the greatest vehicle for lasting change in the world.
Thinking through, can you bring glory to God in what you do? And then, again, back to, I think, Colossians 3:23, is this something that I can do heartily, working for the Lord, rather than for man or even rather than myself. I have to check my ego every day as I think through, how am I really working to glorify myself, or is this really to bring glory to God?
I view that the workplace, everybody spends time there, right? So many hours a week. And so how can you make a difference? By being consistent and showing people just in your actions that you care and can be present with your time, have a conversation with them, because I think when you build relationship, then that's when people trust you and you can talk a little bit more about your faith, what you believe in. And with all the connections that we have, focusing on giving back and serving and connecting with community groups and charities, it takes it to this other level. So we're affecting families, we're affecting community groups, and it starts to build on each other. And it's a beautiful thing. God gives you different giftings, and if you have that business gifting and you can excel within business, you can capture a big audience. Being in that position where you can have an area of influence and affect people positively is really powerful.